The greatest lie I ever told cost me absolutely everything, but it bought the man I loved the world. Sometimes when the acidic sting of cheap bleach burns the cracks in my knuckles, I pause in the middle of scrubbing the porcelain of a stranger's hotel bathroom and let myself remember the exact moment I shattered my own heart. I remember the way the words tasted on my tongue like ash and copper when I looked into the most beautiful, devastatingly hopeful eyes I had ever known and told him he wasn't enough for me. I told him I needed yachts and penthouses, not cheap diners and broken promises. I watched the light literally die in his eyes, taking my soul right along with it. Now, 5 years later, his face looks down at me from massive billboards, glossy magazine covers, and the glowing screens of the muted televisions and the very hotel lobbies I sweep. Liam Hayes, captain, MVP, millionaire. He got everything he ever dreamed of exactly like I planned. And I got the secret I protect with my life, sleeping on a second-hand mattress in a cramped, drafty apartment on the wrong side of the tracks, the very tracks I once forced Liam to cross just to see me. Before the fall, before the scandal that turned my family name into a curse word, I was Eleanor Sterling. To the town of Oak Creek, I was practically royalty. We lived in a sprawling, cold monstrosity of a mansion built on my father's real estate empire. My life was a suffocatingly perfect itinerary of country club dinners, private tutors, and fake smiles. Everyone loved me, or rather they loved my father's checkbook. Everyone except Liam. Liam smelled like fresh ice, pine soap, and pure, unfiltered ambition. He was the captain of the high school hockey team, a local legend on the ice, but off the ice, he was just a boy from the impoverished South Side who shared a tiny, chaotic one-bedroom apartment with his fiercely hardworking mother, Brenda. She worked double shifts at a diner just to afford his skates. Liam didn't look at me and see the sterling fortune. He looked at me and saw me the girl who liked to eat cold pizza on the hood of his beat-up Chevy truck, the girl who hated the country club, the girl who felt like she couldn't breathe in her own home. We loved each other with that terrifying, all-consuming desperation that only exists when you're 18. We kept it a secret from my parents, stealing moments behind the bleachers, driving out to the bluffs where the city lights looked like fallen stars. He would pull me against his chest, trace the line of my jaw, and whisper promises into the dark. Just wait, Al. The scouts are looking at me. I'm going to the NHL, I'm going to buy my mom a house, and then I'm going to take you away from all of this. We'll have a little place, maybe a dog. You won't ever have to wear one of those stiff dresses again. I believed him. I believed in us. He was my entire universe, my safe harbor. But universes can collapse overnight. It started with a whisper, a rumor at school, and then, one terrifying Tuesday morning, it was a fleet of black FBI SUVs tearing up the manicured gravel of our driveway. I was sitting at the massive mahogany dining table when federal agents swarmed the house. My father, the untouchable Richard Sterling, was let out in handcuffs. The charges were plastered across every news channel within the hour: wire fraud, embezzlement, a massive Ponzi scheme that had defrauded hundreds of local families, wiping out their life savings and retirement funds. Overnight, the golden girl became the town pariah. Friends I'd known since kindergarten crossed the street when they saw me. My mother locked herself in the master bedroom with a bottle of pills and a lawyer on speed dial. The bank froze all our assets. The house, the cars, the clothes, it was all a mirage built on stolen money. I was drowning in a sea of public hatred and private terror. And then, just when I thought I couldn't sink any deeper, my period was late. I remember sitting on the cold tiles of my opulent, soon-to-be-foreclosed bathroom, staring at the 2 pink lines on the plastic stick. Outside my window, I could hear the distant shouts of angry protesters holding signs at our front gates. Inside, my hands were shaking so violently I dropped the test. I was 18, the daughter of a disgraced criminal, penniless, hated by the town, and I was carrying Liam's child. My first instinct was pure, overwhelming joy, instantly suffocated by paralyzing panic. Liam was just weeks away from the regional championship. College scouts from all over the country were flying in specifically to watch him. This was his ticket out. This was his one and only shot to save his mother from working until her hands bled, his one chance to be exactly who he was born to be. I wiped my tears, shoved the test into my pocket, and made a decision. I had to tell him. We would figure it out. We loved each other. He was strong enough for both of us. I grabbed my keys, snuck out the back door to avoid the reporters, and drove straight to his neighborhood, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm of fear and hope against my ribs. The rusted iron stairs of Liam's apartment complex groaned under my weight, the sound echoing in the damp afternoon air. The smell of boiled cabbage and wet concrete usually made me smile. It meant I was close to him, far away from the sterile, lavender-scented halls of my father's mansion. I gripped the plastic stick in the pocket of my trench coat like a lifeline. My heart was a frantic bird batting against my ribs. He'll know what to do, I kept telling myself. Liam always knows what to do. I knocked on peeling green paint of apartment 4B. I was expecting Liam's towering frame, his warm, rough hands pulling me inside out of the cold. Instead, the door cracked open to reveal his mother, Brenda. Normally, Brenda looked at me with a mixture of quiet amusement and gentle warmth. She used to joke that I was the only rich girl in town who knew how to properly clean a cast iron skillet. But today, the warmth was gone. Her diner uniform was stained, her face pale and drawn with an exhaustion that seemed bone deep. When she saw me, her eyes hardened into twin stones of ice. "He's not here, Eleanor." "He's at the rink," she said, her voice devoid of its usual melodic lilt. She didn't step aside to let me in. Instead, she stepped out onto the narrow concrete landing, pulling the door firmly shut behind her. "Brenda, please, I really need to talk to him. It's urgent," I started, my voice trembling. "About what?" She cut in, her tone sharp as broken glass. "About how your father stole the pension fund of half the people on this street. The shift manager at my diner lost her entire retirement yesterday, Eleanor. Because of your family." The word struck me with physical force. I stumbled back a half step, my breath catching. I didn't know. I'm so sorry I had nothing to do with." "I know you didn't," Brenda sighed, rubbing her temples, a sudden desperate maternal ferocity replacing her anger. "But the world doesn't care. Do you know who is sitting in the stands at the arena tonight? The head scout for the University of Michigan and 2 talent agents for the NHL draft. Do you know what they care about just as much as a wrist shot? Image, character, PR. She stepped closer, invading my space, pleading with me, demanding of me. If Liam is tied to the Sterling name right now, he is radioactive. The press will swarm him. They will ask him about your father's Ponzi scheme instead of his hockey stats. He'll become a tabloid circus. They won't touch him, Eleanor." I felt the blood drain from my face. My hand, still buried deep in my pocket, slowly released its grip on the pregnancy test. It suddenly felt like a lead weight heavy enough to drag us both to the bottom of the ocean. "He loves you," Brenda's voice cracked, tears finally brimming in her exhausted eyes. "He loves you so much he's blind to it. If you ask him to, he will throw away everything he's worked for since he was 6 years old just to stand by you through this nightmare. He'll stay in Oak Creek, he'll take a shift down at the lumber mill, and he will die a little bit every single day. You've had a life of luxury, Eleanor. Please, don't take away my son's only chance to have a life at all." She didn't know about the baby. If she had known, she would have realized it was already too late. But as I stared into the pleading, terrified eyes of the woman who had scrubbed floors so her son could buy hockey sticks, a horrifying clarity washed over me. If Liam knew I was pregnant, he wouldn't just stay. He would chain himself to my ruined life. He would marry the disgraced daughter of a thief, give up the draft, and spend the rest of his life suffocating under the weight of my family's scandal and a child he wasn't financially ready for. I couldn't let my father's sins destroy Liam, too. If I truly loved him, I had to let him go. I had to make sure he never looked back. I had to be the villain so he could fly. I waited for him in the freezing drizzle by his beat-up Chevy truck outside the ice rink. When the heavy glass doors opened and he walked out, his gym bag slung over his shoulder, his face lit up with a smile so beautiful it physically hurt to look at. "Elle." "God, I've been trying to call you all day." He rushed forward, dropping his bag, reaching his strong arms out to pull me into his chest. I took a deliberate step backward. The coldness I forced into my eyes took every ounce of soul I had left. "Don't," I said. My voice sounded foreign, hollow, and terribly cruel. "I just came to say goodbye, Liam." His smile faltered, confusion knitting his brows. "What?" "Elle, honey, I know things are insane right now. It's bad, but we'll get through this. You can stay at my place, my mom won't mind." "There is no we," I snapped, channeling the worst, most entitled version of my father I could muster. "Look at my life, Liam. The feds took our house. My trust fund is frozen. I am facing absolute ruin. Do you really think you can fix this? With what?" A minor league hockey salary that might not even happen? He looked as if I had reached into his chest and crushed his lungs. Elle, what are you saying? I'm saying I need security, real security. And I found someone who can actually provide it. Someone from my world, an older guy my father knows who is helping us with the lawyers. The lie tasted like battery acid on my tongue, burning my throat as it came out. It was fun, Liam. Slumming it with the poor jock was a nice rebellion against my parents. But the party's over. When the money disappeared, I realized I can't be with a charity case. The devastation in his eyes was absolute. I watched the boy who loved me, the father of the child growing inside me, shatter into a million unrecognizable pieces. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just stood there in the rain, the light violently extinguishing from his eyes, his jaw tightening until a muscle ticked in his cheek. I see, he whispered, his voice trembling with a terrifying, hollow quiet. He picked up his gym bag, his knuckles white. I hope his money keeps you warm at night, Eleanor. He turned and walked away into the rain. And I stood there, a disgraced, penniless 18-year-old, clutching a positive pregnancy test in my pocket, utterly and completely alone. The enormity of what I had just done, the endless, terrifying abyss of a future without him crashed over me, driving me to my knees on the wet asphalt. The next 5 years were a masterclass in survival, a brutal descent from penthouse suites to scrubbing the grout in them. When my father was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, my mother suffered a complete breakdown and moved to Europe to live off the charity of a distant cousin, leaving me behind with nothing but a duffel bag of maternity clothes and a ruined last name. I became a ghost in my own hometown. The only place that would hire the disgraced Sterling daughter was the Grand Belmont Hotel, working the graveyard and early morning shifts as a maid, but I wasn't completely alone. I had Finn. Finn was the beautiful, heartbreaking mirror image of the boy I had broken. He had Liam's unruly dark hair, his stubborn chin, and the exact same way of furrowing his brow when he was concentrating. Finn was my entire universe. We lived in a tiny, drafty studio apartment, counting pennies for heating bills and living off bulk pasta. But every time I looked at him, I knew I had done the right thing. Liam had been drafted first overall. He was a multimillionaire, a superstar, a legend in the making. He had bought his mother that house. He was flying and I was grounded, anchored by the heavy, beautiful weight of our secret. Until a Tuesday in November when the universe decided I hadn't bled quite enough. The Grand Belmont was in a frenzy. A massive charity gala was happening downtown and the penthouse suite had been booked by a VIP guest. Brenda, my manager, was short-staffed, so she shoved a fresh cart of cleaning supplies at me. Get up to the penthouse, Eleanor. Deep clean the master bath before the guest returns from his press conference. I was on my hands and knees, my hair plastered to my forehead with sweat, scrubbing a stubborn watermark off the Italian marble bathtub. The harsh smell of industrial bleach burned my nostrils. I was wearing a hideous oversized polyester uniform, my hands red and raw. I didn't hear the heavy mahogany door open over the sound of the running water. I only felt the sudden, terrifying shift in the air in the room. I turned around, wiping the back of my hand across my forehead, and my heart physically stopped beating. Standing in the doorway of the bathroom, looking down at me was Liam. He wasn't the scrappy boy in the beat-up jacket anymore. He was a mountain of a man poured into a custom-tailored charcoal suit, a Rolex gleaming on his wrist, radiating cold, untouchable power. The air vanished from my lungs. I was frozen, kneeling at his $1,000 leather shoes with a toilet brush in my hand. For a terrifying second, his blue eyes widened in pure shock. He looked at my name tag. He looked at the ragged sponges, the cheap cart, the dark circles under my eyes. And then the shock contorted into something that made me want to die right there on the tiles. It twisted into bitter, venomous vindication. Eleanor, he said. His voice was deeper now, a dark velvet rumble that sent shivers down my spine. He leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms, looking around the opulent bathroom and then back down at me. Well, isn't this poetic? I couldn't speak. My throat was paralyzed. I just stared up at him, feeling the absolute totality of my humiliation. He took a slow step forward, towering over me. Is this the security you were looking for? He asked, his voice dripping with acid. Is this the life you wanted? Scrubbing the toilets of the people you used to look down on? I swallowed hard, my hands trembling so violently I had to grip the edge of the bathtub. Liam, please. Where's the billionaire, Elle? He mocked, a cruel smile playing on his lips, though his eyes were completely dead. Did the money run out? Did he get bored of you? You threw away everything we had. You threw me away like garbage so you wouldn't have to be poor. And look at you now. He gestured vaguely at my uniform. Look where I am, and look where you are. You broke my heart for absolutely nothing. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, but I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. Don't cry, I told myself. Take it, let him hate you. It's the only way to keep him safe. I lowered my head, staring at the wet marble floor, and remained completely, agonizingly silent. Suddenly, a tiny, high-pitched voice echoed from the hallway of the suite. Mommy? My blood turned to ice. No, 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 no. Finn's daycare at the community center had closed early due to a burst pipe. My manager had let him sit quietly in the staff break room with his coloring books, promising he wouldn't wander. But he had followed my car up the service elevator. Before I could scramble to my feet, a small boy with messy dark hair peeked his head around the doorframe. Finn froze, his big eyes darting from me on the floor to the massive man in the suit. Finn's jaw dropped. He dropped his red crayon. Because Finn loved hockey. Finn watched every game on the little fuzzy TV in our kitchen. You! Finn gasped, taking a hesitant step toward Liam, his eyes shining with absolute worship. You're the hockey knight. You're Liam Hayes. I told Mommy you look just like the dad from my dreams. Liam stiffened, his entire body going rigid. He looked down at the boy, then slowly turned his head to look at me, a dangerous, chaotic storm brewing in his eyes. The resemblance was staggering if you knew what to look for, but Liam's mind was clouded by 5 years of my lies. Your dad? Liam's voice was barely a whisper. He looked at Finn, kneeling down slightly so they were eye to eye. Where is your dad, buddy? He went away before I was born, Finn said matter-of-factly. Mommy says he was a very important man, but she works here now. Liam stood up slowly. The air in the room became so thick I felt like I was suffocating. He looked at me, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. Is this him? Liam demanded, his voice cracking with a sudden, devastating vulnerability that he quickly covered with anger. Is this the kid of the guy you left me for? The guy who abandoned you? The truth screamed in my throat, begging to be let out. He's yours, and I did it all for you. But I remembered Brenda's exhausted face. I remembered the flashbulbs, the scandal, the absolute ruin of the sterling name that would drag Liam down even now if the tabloids found out his child was the grandson of the city's most hated criminal. I stood up, wiping my wet hands on my apron, stepping in front of Finn defensively. I looked the love of my life directly in his eyes and drove the final nail into my own coffin. Yes, I lied, my voice shaking. He's his. Please, Mr. Hayes, just let me finish cleaning your room. Liam stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. The vindication was gone, replaced by a profound, hollow disgust. But as he looked down at Finn one last time, his eyes snagged on something. He frowned, stepping closer, his gaze locked on Finn's left forearm, where the sleeve of his little t-shirt had written up. My breath caught. Right there on the inside of Finn's wrist was a very distinct star-shaped birthmark. The exact same birthmark Liam had on his own wrist. Liam froze. I saw the gears grinding in his head, the sudden, violent clash of math, timelines, and physical evidence. He looked from the birthmark up to Finn's eyes, and then finally, with terrifying realization, back to me. The air in the penthouse bathroom suddenly grew too thin to breathe, thick with a heavy, suffocating static. Finn, sensing the sudden shift in gravity, took a startled step backward. His little sneakers lost their grip on the freshly bleached wet marble. Before my brain could even signal my body to move, Finn tripped backward over the heavy yellow plastic of my cleaning caddy. He went down hard, his elbow and shoulder striking the floor with a sickening, hollow thud. A sharp, terrified wail tore from his lungs, echoing against the porcelain walls. Finn! I screamed, dropping my brushes and scrambling forward. But Liam was faster. The man who made a living moving like lightning on the ice was at my son's side in a fraction of a second. He dropped to his knees, his expensive tailored trousers soaking up the dirty mop water, entirely uncaring. His massive, scarred hands hovered over Finn with a terrifyingly gentle grace, checking his arms, his head murmuring low, soothing words that vibrated in his chest. I got you, buddy. Hey, you're okay. I got you, Liam whispered, lifting Finn's small frame against his broad chest. As Liam gently rubbed Finn's arm to check for bruises, the oversized sleeve of my son's hand-me-down sweater rode up to his elbow. Right there on the pale skin of Finn's inner wrist was the birthmark, a jagged, unmistakable little star. The exact same constellation of melanin that sat on Liam's own left wrist. I watched Liam's massive shoulders go perfectly still. It was as if time had physically stopped in the room. His thumb slowly traced the edge of the mark on Finn's arm. He didn't say a word, he didn't look at me. But as he smoothed Finn's messy dark hair to calm his crying, I saw his long fingers deliberately, carefully detach a single, long strand of dark hair from the collar of Finn's shirt. He slipped it into the pocket of his suit jacket with the fluid motion of a magician. He set Finn down gently, stood up without a single backward glance, and walked out of the suite. For 3 agonized days, the silence was a physical torture. I flinched every time my flip phone buzzed. I jumped at shadows in the hotel corridors. I knew what he was doing. And I knew that the fragile, pathetic life I had built to protect him was about to detonate. The explosion came on a Thursday night. A torrential downpour was battering the single cracked window of my studio apartment. Finn was fast asleep on a mattress on the floor, curled under a faded superhero blanket. When the furious, violent pounding started on my front door, the entire door frame rattled. I didn't ask who it was. I knew. I unbolted the lock, my hand shaking so violently I could barely turn the deadbolt. Liam pushed his way inside, bringing the freezing rain and a tidal wave of fury with him. He was drenched, his hair plastered to his forehead, his eyes wild and bloodshot. He looked like a man who had just been torn apart by wolves. In his right hand, he clutched a crumpled piece of medical letterhead. He slammed the paper down onto my tiny, cheap kitchen table. 99.9%. Liam breathed, his voice a ragged, horrific rasp. He stepped toward me, backing me up against the peeling wallpaper of the kitchen area. He is my son. My son, Eleanor. Liam, please, keep your voice down, he's sleeping, I begged, tears already spilling hot and fast down my cheeks. Don't you dare tell me what to do. He roared, though he forcibly dropped his volume to a venomous hiss, his chest heaving. 5 years. You looked me in the eye and told me you were too good for me. You let me believe you were a shallow, heartless monster. You let me believe you abandoned me for some rich guy. And all this time, you were raising my child in this freezing, rotting box, working as a maid. Why? If you didn't want my money, if you didn't want me, why not at least ask for child support? Why did you steal my son from me? I didn't steal him, I sobbed, the dam finally breaking. 5 years of exhaustion, starvation, and heartbreak ripped out of my throat in a jagged scream. I saved you. Liam froze, his face inches from mine, his eyes burning with a dangerous confusion. What the hell are you talking about? The day my father was arrested. The day my entire world ended. I cried, grabbing the lapels of his wet jacket, my knuckles turning white. I was terrified. I was pregnant. I came to your apartment to tell you, Liam. I came to beg you to help me. His face went pale. You never came to my apartment. I did. I screamed, shaking him, the agonizing truth finally pouring out like poison from a wound. But you weren't there, your mother was, and she stopped me. Liam stumbled back a half step, shaking his head, denial instantly hardening his features. No, my mom loves you. She wouldn't. She loved you, Liam. I interrupted, my voice breaking into a wretched guttural sob. She knew the NHL scouts were in the stands that night. She knew my father's scandal was exploding across the national news. She told me that if you tied yourself to the sterling name to a disgraced, penniless girl, the press would eat you alive. You would become a PR nightmare. They wouldn't draft you. She told me you would stay here in this miserable town, working at a lumber mill, and you would die inside every single day. She begged me not to ruin your life. Liam stood completely paralyzed. The breath left his lungs in a hollow, ragged wheeze. I didn't know I was pregnant when she said it, I wept, sliding down the wall until I was sitting on the cold, linoleum floor, pulling my knees to my chest. But I knew she was right. If I told you about Finn, you would have stayed. You would have given up everything. You wouldn't be on billboards, Liam. You wouldn't have bought her that house. You would be drowning right here with me. I had to make you hate me. I had to break your heart so you would leave me behind and fly. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a man's entire reality shattering into a million irredeemable pieces. I looked up through my blurry, tear-soaked vision. Liam was staring at the wall, his face devoid of all color. The truth was violently rewiring his brain every memory, every bitter interview he had given about his heartbreak, the empire he had built on a foundation of rage. All of it was built on my sacrifice. And it was built on his mother's betrayal. He looked down at me huddled in my cheap, faded pajamas on the floor of a slum. He looked at the water damage on the ceiling. He looked at our son sleeping on a mattress on the floor. A terrible, agonizing sob ripped out of Liam's chest, a sound so broken and animalistic it made my blood run cold. He fell to his knees in front of me, his massive hands reaching out, trembling violently, stopping inches from my face as if he was terrified he would break me if he touched me. "Eleanor," Liam choked out, his voice cracking into 1,000 splintered pieces. "Oh my God, Elle, what did we do? What did she do to you?" He didn't wait for an answer. The man who had looked at me with such pure, unadulterated hatred just hours ago suddenly collapsed forward, wrapping his massive arms around my trembling frame. He pulled me off the cold linoleum, crushing me against his chest, burying his face in the crook of my neck. I felt the wetness of his tears soaking through the thin fabric of my cheap pajama top. He held me as if he was terrified that if he let go, I would turn into dust and blow away. For the first time in 5 years, I was safe. I let my head fall against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of rain, expensive cologne, and that underlying hint of pine soap that hadn't changed since we were teenagers. We sat there on the floor of that rotting apartment, two adults weeping over the ghosts of the teenagers we used to be, mourning the family we could have been, and the absolute hell we had survived to get back to each other. But Liam Hayes was a captain. He was a man who spent his life analyzing the ice, seeing the plays before they happened, and taking decisive action. When the tears finally stopped, a terrifying icy resolve settled over his features. He pulled back, his large hands gently framing my face, his thumbs wiping away my tears. "You saved me," he whispered, his eyes burning with a fierce, unwavering devotion. "You walked through hell so I could play a stupid game. But the game is over, Elle. I'm taking the wheel now." He stood up, pulling me up with him. He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. He walked over to where Finn was sleeping, gently scooped our son up into his arms, and wrapped him in his soaking wet $3,000 suit jacket. Finn mumbled sleepily, nuzzling his little face into Liam's neck. Liam closed his eyes, pressing a desperate kiss to our son's dark hair. "Grab whatever has sentimental value," Liam said, his voice leaving absolutely no room for argument. "Leave the rest. You are never spending another second in this room. You are never picking up a mop again. We are going home." That night, Liam moved us into his penthouse at the Belmont, the same hotel where I had scrubbed toilets just hours prior. The next morning, the reality of his mother's betrayal hit the tabloids, but not because of a leak. Liam released the statement himself. He didn't just cut Brenda off. He publicly severed all ties, removing her from his foundation and his life. He told the world exactly why. He didn't care about the PR. He didn't care about his image. He took my father's disgraced name and he shielded it with his own untouchable legacy. When the reporters swarmed, trying to dig into my past, Liam stood in front of the cameras, his jaw set, and told them that his greatest achievement wasn't a Stanley Cup, it was the woman who had sacrificed her entire universe so he could have his, and the son they shared. It's funny how life works. I used to think the greatest lie I ever told was the one that destroyed my life. But as I stand here today, looking through the thick plexiglass of the private training rink, I know better. The ice gleams under the bright stadium lights. Out there, Liam is skating backward, a wide, breathtaking smile on his face. Gliding clumsily toward him, bundled up in a tiny jersey with highs stitched across the shoulders, is Finn. Liam catches him, lifting him high into the air, their matching star-shaped birthmarks flashing under the lights. Their laughter echoes through the empty arena, filling every broken crack in my heart. My hands aren't raw anymore. They are warm, resting on my slightly rounded stomach, feeling the soft kicks of our daughter. We didn't get a fairy tale without scars. We lost 5 years we can never get back. But every time Liam looks at me from across the ice, his blue eyes filled with that same devastatingly hopeful love from when we were 18, I know the truth. Sometimes breaking your own heart is the only way to build a heart strong enough to hold a love like this.